muddle through. Y'all keep me honest if I forget to motion or anything of that nature.
We're live.
Great.
And
Thank
Tim,
you, Laura.
I'll be happy to serve as secretary. So
That'd be great.
Okay.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our June 3rd Mountain Community Capital Fund meeting. Thanks to all those on the committee that have joined us today, but also members of the public who may be tuning in as well. My name is Tim Love. I'm the vice chair for the Mountain Community Capital Fund. And I'll go ahead and get our meeting started. So I'd like to call our meeting to order, but first we'd also like to do a roll call. So I'll sort of call folks out that I know are available, but if you could state that you're present, your role, and whether or not you're a voting member, we'll do that. And then if our secretary could formally take that down in the minutes, that'd be great as well. All right, so we're just going to go down the list. We're going to start with Karen Omansky.
I'm Karen Omansky with Self-Help, and I'm not a voting member.
Yasleen Gonzalez.
Good morning, everyone. I am Yoselin Gonzalez from Mountain Bisworks, and I'm a non-voting member.
Tara Brown.
Good morning, I'm Tara Brown, also with Self-Help, and I am not a voting member.
Angelica Driver is not present today. Nikki Reed.
good morning, Nikki Reed with the City of Asheville, and I am a voting member.
Thank you. Jeff Kaplan, also not with us today. Maui Vang.
Good morning, I'm Maui Vang. I'm the 8th County appointee, and I am a voting member.
Thank you. Zuri. Not with us today. Rachel Nygaard, also not with us today. Frank McGowan, not with us today. Dee Williams.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dee Williams. I'm appointed by the City of Asheville, and I'm a voting member. Thank you.
Thank you, Dee. Carl Aguirre.
Hi, I'm Carl Alguire. I am the city appointee and I am a voting member.
Thank you. All right, and then for those that are on the call, but that I didn't call your name, if you could introduce yourselves as well. We could go Laura, Christina, and then Ricardo.
Good morning. Oh, sorry, Ricardo, you can go.
Sorry, Christina. Hi, Ricardo Basurto here from Cape, not a voting member.
Christina Harris here, Community Development Coordinator, not a voting member.
Laura Neer, City of Asheville Community Development staff. I do the CDBG CV, not a voting member.
Thank you. Is there anyone on the call in the meeting that is present but that has not introduced themselves? All right, thank you. So now that we've done roll call, would like to kind of assess whether or not we have quorum. And I think we may not today. I'm doing this from our count.
I think we do.
I think we do, Tim. I was looking at that as well. So we have 8 voting members on our roster, 5 non-voting members. And so for our attendance today, we have 5 voting members and 3 non-voting. Is that everybody else's count too?
That's what I was seeing as well.
Great. Okay. So then I do believe that means we have a quorum if we have a majority present. Is that right? So hopefully we can proceed.
That's right. All right. Well, thank you for doing that, Nikki Reed. And thank you for serving as today's temporary secretary. All right, so we'll kick off the agenda. Jeff sent that out earlier in the week, so everyone should have that. Our first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the May 22 meeting. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to review that. Any questions or concerns about the minutes? Any discussion points? If none, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Mr. Chairman,
Hey, Dee, I think you went mute.
can you hear me now? I apologize.
You're good.
I move that we approve the April minutes as written.
Second.
Great. We have a second. All those in favor, if you could say aye,
Aye.
raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Great. Any opposed? Great. Our minutes from the May meeting are approved. Thank you for that. Moving on to old business, we have a proposed change to the credit underwriting committee. And so for those that are familiar, this is the Mountain Community Capital Fund Operating Committee. We all serve together. In our original sort of guideline documentation, there was the potential to activate a credit underwriting committee. Historically, we had opted not to do that simply because there had not been a need identified, and felt it was important for the majority of the members of the board to stay involved and be aware of what's going on, as opposed to shrinking those discussions and having them separately. So that is a reminder there. And then Karen, if I could pick on you for a moment, we've talked about this in the past. Anything you would add related to the credit underwriting committee or discussions on that?
So do you want my comments on what's written here or just the credit underwriting?
You can do both.
Yeah, so since I'm the one who raised last time, I think I'll just give my comments on this. I think that I don't know how to word this, but maybe I think it maybe should be the committee. Somehow it needs to say that there should be a credit underwriting committee, and that the operating committee may choose to serve as the credit underwriting committee. And then, because it seems that you want a credit underwriting committee, whether that's the operating committee choosing to serve as that credit underwriting committee, or the operating committee choosing to set a separate one, right? But there's still, it sounds like you still want that role identified, right? I could be wrong about that.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
If we don't serve as an underwriting committee, then who will? If we're appointed by the two municipal bodies, and some of this involves taxpayer monies, who would operate as the underwriting committee if it were not us, unless the lender or lenders per se, and who would oversee what they were doing? I mean, is it an oxymoron that we're dealing with, or is it? I mean, I don't know. Maybe there was a format or a model template that we followed that had a very large and ranging group of people, and we responded with that terminology. But it would be left to the will of this committee and also how we perceive ourselves in our role, not unless we're going to be a rubber stamp. And that's something that I think, because taxpayer money is involved, that we do provide some oversight, and that would be my comment.
And I think you're right. The question is, do we need sort of a separate? I think the key question is, do we need a separate committee, or can the operating committee serve as that underwriting committee and not create additional layers. And I think, Karen, what I heard from you potentially is maybe we just need to more clearly state that the operating committee can choose to act as the underwriting committee. And maybe we just need, a section D as an example that says clearly that we can take that action. Is that what you're getting at, Karen?
Yeah, I'm going to let Carl go. Yeah, I think that if it is the will of the operating committee to just have this authority and never have a credit underwriting committee, then I think you could probably get rid of this separate section, credit underwriting committee, and move the body under, I'd have to look at what section it is, but under the responsibilities of the operating committee.
Thank you, Karen. Go ahead, Carl.
I thought 2 meetings ago that we talked about the underwriting committee could be the committee. I thought it was a stopgap for amounts over 50. Do I have that right?
I think we've batted this around a few times, and I think we should try to bring it to closure here. And simply, I think y'all feel free to chime in, but my recommendation would be to just more clearly state that the credit underwriting committee can be the operating committee if this board or if this committee, votes on it, basically. That would be my proposal, just creating a new section D or something of that nature. Any concerns on that? I'm certainly open. I just,
Could we put it in the form of a motion if we're prepared to vote, or is it something that needs further research? If it's the will of the committee, could we not just have a motion to that effect to put some closure to this issue? If the committee is willing, or if they're not, then say so.
so I see, Karen, you look like you're about to chime in, but Maui, I think you are there as well.
You can go, Karen, if you were first. It's fine. I just had a question. I don't have a.
No, go ahead. I have a couple questions too.
Oh, okay. All right. So I'm looking at the proposed change document. So obviously this is just 5.1. It's not in the humongous, the long. So I don't know if the credit underwriting committee is more defined earlier in the document. I wonder if we had like one sentence to kind of define what the underwriting committee does, and then the sentence that the committee, or to be more clear, the operating committee may also function as the credit underwriting committee. I wonder if that'll do away with some of the confusion. Currently, as it reads to me, it is clear enough that we can do both. Like we can function as a credit underwriting committee, but to someone else, it may cause some confusion, since I've been in these conversations and someone else may not be. So that's just my thought and my question of whether we defined the credit underwriting committee a little bit more earlier in the document, and this is simply referencing that.
Thank you, Maui. Karen, what was your?
Yeah. So one, responding to Maui, I do think just with a little editing, you could start the section, just thinking now what you just said, with the credit underwriting committee shall have and exercise the following duties, that last sentence. And then at the end, put the operating committee may function as a credit underwriting committee or something like that. And that way, for now, like you're covered. If the operating committee always chooses to just have these responsibilities, that's fine. And if the operating committee maybe grows at some point or something, and people, don't want to be involved in the credit underwriting committee, then there's that opportunity as well. I had a couple other comments getting to, particularly in B and C, just some clarification questions that I had. So if people want to stay on the topic that we're talking about for a minute, I'll hold those for now.
So before we do that, then any thoughts in response to Karen's suggestion? Just leading off section 5.1 with a quick, this is what the group does, and the operating committee may serve as the credit underwriting committee. Does that sound good?
That makes sense to me.
Cool. Let's do that. And then D, to your point, I think taking some formal action just to put it to bed is a good idea. Let's hear what Karen has in addition. So maybe we can just tackle it with one big motion as opposed to multiple.
Yeah, thank you. So mine are just from as a lender, just getting some clarity on B, when it says that the loans will be reviewed for a period of time up to 12 months. I'm just unclear whether that means that the committee is going to be reviewing monthly performance for those 12 months, or whether that means that the committee can just decide, and any of these is fine. I'm just unclear whether the credit committee, whether the underwriting committee can choose to review those loans at any time during that 12 months. So they didn't look at them in advance, but they can choose to look at them, 6 months after it's approved. They can see there's a $55,000 loan and approved to look at it. And so I just want to understand from the lender side what that means. Because it's unclear to me when they say it could review, what that review would entail.
So, and pardon me, I'm so sorry. I should have, may I?
Please.
Yeah. Are you?
Oh, good. No, D, go.
Thank you. I'm so sorry to interject again. It comes down to oversight, as far as I'm concerned, since there are taxpayer monies involved, and then we're the last stopping point for oversight, unless something happens, as you know, and we'll know if something has happened to a loan that's not positive. But it's always good to have oversight all along the process, rather than having somebody report to you that a loan has failed or 2 loans have failed. I think we should have the right to review anything that is in that pipeline that involves utilization of taxpayer funding. And that's the only reason why we're here. We're not here to micromanage. We're just here to provide oversight, and we are responsible to the bodies that appointed us. I would say that.
Yeah, and so I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. I'm not questioning the oversight. I'm just, to me, when I read this, I'm just unclear whether when it says, and sorry, I'm looking away from the screen. I'm looking at a separate screen that has the language. Loans greater than 50 up to 75,000 will be reviewed by the credit underwriting committee after loan closing for a period of time up to 12 months. My question is just, it can be a both, but is that referring to reviewing the loan as it was made at origination to make sure that it followed the guidelines and the guarantee should apply? Or does that mean, is this going to the servicing and looking at the monthly review, a review of monthly payments? And the reason that I'm asking, again, both of those are fine in terms of oversight, but I will say that for me as a lender, if I know that you're going to review potentially, and it's fine, the loans from 50 to 70,000, I am probably going to bring any loan between 50 and 70,000 to the credit underwriting committee before we approve it, just to make sure that the guarantee is there. So as a lender, I just want to be clear what this is asking, so that I know what we should do.
Thank you, Karen. Yeah, I think to break it apart, and I'd like to hear from y'all, but certainly the latter part, like in terms of monthly, like what's the status of this loan? How's it going? Like I think that goes without saying. I think this group wants to be dialed in on that. But similarly, on the front end, to your point, like I think the purpose of this committee is likely at these higher dollar values to make sure that there's some visibility at the committee level. And so I'm open to thoughts on that. And anyone want to chime in?
I'll chime in to say that I understand. I think it's vague. And it's probably intentionally vague, either to allow for that flexibility, as you're saying, those kind of two elements of review. But what I'm hearing is that as the lender, what it implies is that then you would seek to bring all loans at the $50,000 level forward for review so that can carry forward. So I think that's what's challenging. Is it seems like B is not necessarily, section B or section 5.1B is not consistent with A, because what it sounds to me like is that if that review period implies that it's gonna be on loans of 50,000 up to 70, then you were saying that you would then bring forward any loan of 50,000 and above to require that approval of the credit underwriting committee in that case, because it means that it's subject to review. So why not go ahead and make those two items consistent? Is that something does that sound fair, or is it just to clarify section B as well?
I think for me, so I don't want to speak for other lenders. It may just be clarifying section B, because another lender may decide, or even we may decide that, well, this one it's pretty straightforward. It's very clear. We are confident that the guarantee will be approved for the 55,000. So we are comfortable making it and having it be reviewed after the fact. So I think maybe just clarify it, that language.
Okay. So then what we could do, and again, I think the document that was provided with the materials on our agenda is the existing language from what I understand. And then the proposed language for the changes in that first sentence is something that we discussed last time. So maybe I can just share my screen right quick to say, this was what we have in our materials. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. And so it sounds to me like our changes that we've discussed last time and that we're bringing forward today really deal with this first paragraph, that concept of the committee shall designate and appoint, right? And so I think last time we had prompted with the idea of, let me pull up those minutes. If you'll go back to your minutes, you'll see that the discussion and the change of language that we talked about is that the committee may also function, right? Instead of the committee shall designate and appoint, it's the operating committee may also function as the credit underwriting committee. So I think we've had time to kind of simmer on that from last time, and it kind of seems like we're developing consensus around that idea. But what I'm hearing is perhaps then we also need to, at a later meeting, kind of fine tune that section B. So maybe if there's any further discussion on that, it seems like we're kind of looking to kind of close the loop on changing that first sentence to reflect the change, and then asking for us to kind of delve deeper into that B section at a later date. And I'll stop and hand it over to Maui.
Thank you, Nikki. That was very helpful. I just have a question that is maybe a little bit bigger picture, and Karen, hopefully you can help chime in as one of the lenders. How onerous is it for us to kind of set these thresholds of, for 50 to 70, we don't have to formally approve, but we're going to review, but for 70 and higher, we will have to approve. But you're thinking, well, does that make sense just to do 50 and higher? And what I'm curious is, what is the loan volume in that 50 to 70 range versus the 70 and higher? And how much, how much backlog will we create if we set these kind of arbitrary, and do we want to minimize that backlog? So I'm just kind of wondering how we came up with these specific points, because I wasn't here in the earlier days when these 50 and 70, was defined. But from a lender's perspective, is there a big difference? Like, if we kind of lower the threshold to a 50 period, then, that's actually not going to be too much extra work. Or no, there's a lot of loans between that 50 and 70 that if we had to come to you every single time, that's going to create a lot of backlog and people won't get funded. So I would just love to hear any perspective that you have on that.
I think it just would be good for Yasmin to answer. So I don't know, Yasmin, if you're still on the call.
I am. And just to clarify, you're asking for the average amount of loans that we see above the 50,000?
Yes,
Okay.
kind of the proportion of the 50 to 70 versus the over 70, and like, do we even really need to dial in on that 50 and 70, or can we kind of make it more simplistic?
So yeah, I mean, because the threshold for the guarantee is 70,000, really, I think we've only seen about 2 loans so far that meet that criteria, and they go up to that amount. So, it's definitely below the 50,000 where we see the most volume, and the reason being is because of the thresholds, the guarantee thresholds on the guarantee. Of course, we do, as an organization, Mount Bisworks, we do loans that are much higher than the 70,000, but we can't necessarily use, in a lot of cases, we necessarily take other resources that are available for higher loans than below the 70,000 threshold. I don't know if that answered your question all the way, but yeah, I mean, we haven't seen a whole lot of larger loans that, I think, yeah, like I said, it's only been about 2 or so.
So to clarify, they're primarily, most of them are under the 50,000 threshold.
Yes.
Is that the same?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right at 50 or below 50.
That helps. And Yasleen, if we could keep you on the mic, do you feel like, I mean, it sounds like the activity is below 50. I'm just wondering would it be arduous if we were looking at everything above 50? We currently don't officially, but to Karen's point, maybe the way this is written would encourage that.
Yeah, I mean, if we're looking to see, I guess I don't know how it would look for us to review any loans above the 50. Maybe an update to the committee. We do have the quarterly report, but if that's something that these loans are something that need to be reviewed more often, then how would that look like? And I apologize, my dog's playing with his toy. But yeah, so I mean, we could, if we want to do like a quarterly report and just put just more attention to the deals that are above the 50 or the 70,000, we could definitely add that on the quarterly report as well.
I think, I'm again open to thoughts. I think these quote unquote larger loans, I think it makes sense, but Matt, chime in.
So, full disclosure, coming from a finance background, I do think that this warrants further conversation. I think if we can maybe think about it a little bit more, review the quarterly report that Yasmin have prepared or will prepare, and kind of come with more complete thoughts to like the next meeting or even a spin-off meeting, whatever that looks like. I do think that this is worth kind of nailing down now, given the current state of, what we're looking at with our recent funding. I do think that if we can have a very clear rationale behind why we set certain thresholds, what we're really looking at, what kind of risks we're trying to control for. Otherwise, it just seems kind of between 50 and 70 just seems a little bit arbitrary to me, honestly, when you're looking at a loan portfolio of $3 million, a $20,000 difference is not humongous. But again, I want to understand further, like why we set those thresholds to begin with. And so I do think it warrants further conversation, just me personally wanting to do kind of the due diligence that I typically do from a financial standpoint.
That's great, Mary. Thank you. Karen, what about you?
Yeah, I was just going to make a suggestion. So I think as Nikki raised before, that the immediate issue with the credit underwriting committee is the one that right now it needs to be fixed so that it says the operating committee can operate as the credit underwriting committee. And I'm wondering if it's worthwhile for this voting members to vote on that right now. And then as a reminder, we had said that at Self-Help we'll take a first crack because we have these new funding funds that have come in. We need to update the services and duties agreement, and things like the threshold might not be in there, but this is part of that services and duties agreement. And what we could do is, as we make those suggested updates, that draft, we could flag areas that like this that we think need discussion. And then again, bring that back for the operating committee to review. Like I said, our goal right now is to have it to you sometime later in June so that it can be reviewed at the July meeting, but I'll let you know if that changes. And then have more of these discussions at that meeting.
That sounds like a good plan in my book. Anybody have any concerns with that?
I really
I'm sorry.
appreciate that because I do think that having kind of, I think what we found is it's difficult to kind of piecemeal it, but having a comprehensive view of sharpening some of our duties and service agreements or language that needs to be tightened so that we're ready for this influx of funding. I really appreciate that. And it seems like the process of having kind of this working group led by your team, Karen, like, reviewing the duties and services agreement and then flagging edits, then perhaps we can consider even having the operating committee establish a working group to then fine tune, do that due diligence like Maui was talking about, and then present suggested changes to the full operating committee, and then maybe give some time to kind of let those changes sink in and then be ready to take action at the next meeting, just to give everybody the full understanding. So it sounds like we've kind of piloted that idea with just this modest change to designating the operating committee as the credit underwriting committee, but maybe that's some process tips for how we can see this kind of come together. So we'll certainly put that on the agenda for July to see if it's ready, to see some of the recommended changes from the duties and services agreement, and with those flags. I think that's a great idea to have up on the agenda for July. And then we'll see if we're ready to take action then, or if we need to sit with it for then action to be taken in August. But sounds great.
Awesome. So, Karen, in July, we'll look to add this to the agenda, and then in between now and July, we can have a working group, is what I'm hearing. Do you have anyone who would like to serve on that working group? Aside from Karen?
Is the working group for whenever Karen's team is ready with the proposed, right? That's when we'll kind of pick up and review.
It sounds good to me if that works for Karen. I don't know if there's open-ended questions or anything. But...
Yeah, that's fine. I in terms of timing, just because we need our legal team for the new funds pieces, We need our legal team to look at that to make sure it's reflective of the agreements that we have around those funds, so that just thinking about timing, I think those could be parallel with the working group talking about the other issues. But yeah, I think that could work.
B, your hand is up.
Thank you, Tim. I mean, since we're looking at moving this on, one of the other areas of oversight for an underwriting committee looks like refinances. I don't know if that's something, they always have plagued me when a refinance happens that's folded into a new loan. That is kind of like a red flag for somebody like me. So that may be an area that the underwriting committee may need to take a look at. That's all that I would think. Maybe.
Okay. Anyone want to opt in on the working group? I'll opt myself in as one of the local government partners. Maui, your hand is up. Are you in?
Yes, I'll opt in. I think we'll have to kind of define like meeting schedule because of other stuff. But yeah, I think it's worth, being a part of. Yeah, I would like to be.
Good. D, your hand is up. Alrighty, and then Nikki, I think having a city rep as well as a local government partner. You or Frank. But yeah.
I'll discuss it with Frank, but I'll volunteer and then see if I can get Frank pulled in. So either of us, but I absolutely will have a city representative.
Awesome. Okay,
Great.
so we've got a group, and for those that are listening or paying attention, we can't have the full group meet because that would be a formal meeting. So we're just trying to have a smaller group meet to work through some of the details that'll be presented publicly at a later date, for sure. So, okay, so that works. We'll do that. Karen, can you give us a timeline? It doesn't have to be now, but maybe an email that says, hey, like, I think we'll be ready to meet June 18th or whatever it is. And so we can plan accordingly, and get maybe a couple meetings scheduled that we're working towards.
Yes, I will definitely do that.
Okay, cool.
If I can just
And
get
then,
a quick roll of,
Nikki.
I'm sorry, could you just repeat who our working group members are right quick?
Yep. So we'll have Karen, Maui, Nikki, Dee, and Tim. Very good, very good. So that'll be the plan. We'll get some dates scheduled. And I would say until we have a draft for the group to review, this item stays off of the agenda. So if we can do it in July, awesome. Let's go ahead and knock it out. But if we're not ready in July and we push it to August, then I don't think we need to talk about this again in July, basically, unless we have a draft that we're ready to work through. Does that sound agreeable? Cool. So that would be the tact. Does anybody have feelings about voting on the credit underwriting committee language that was provided? Should we do that today just to close it out, or just wait until we have the full slate? Any strong feelings?
And again, I'll just remind us that so the proposed changes that we discussed at our last meeting, so rather than that first sentence, the committee shall designate and appoint, the two options that we discussed at our last meeting are the committee shall also function as the credit underwriting committee, or the committee may also function. So having just a little changes there. And that's what was discussed at our last meeting that could be up for a motion, or as Tim said, we can defer to the working group for the holistic changes.
Ellie and Dee, y'all have hands raised.
I'll just chime in real quick. So I think I liked what Karen proposed earlier with like adding a D. And I think because that is a little bit more, that's like a next step from what that one sentence. I probably personally, given that we're going to review this whole document anyway, would prefer to not vote today, but it's pretty minor. So, you know, honestly, we can go either way. But yeah, I don't know about if we're ready to add the D and then vote on that today. Part D, that is.
I'm in a similar boat as Maui. Let's just tackle it all at once. But if there's strong feelings against that, feel free to chime in. Dee, you had your hand raised. Is that from earlier or anything that? Okay. Cool. So let's go ahead, Dee.
Yeah, I did raise it. And it just seems like we're working as a working committee. If it's, if we're going to handle this as a working committee, then at a formal meeting, just form a subcommittee, because it doesn't seem like we're moving the agenda along or really getting a lot done. It's already been written as it was during the last meeting. The only way to eat an elephant is one piece at a time. You don't get things done by just moving the whole thing down the road. But if y'all want to do it this way, you know, it is what it is. But that's my comment.
Thank you, Dee. Any strong feelings? I mean, this is a committee, so if someone would like to motion to accept the language as is, we can certainly do that.
Mr. Chairman, I motion that we accept the language as is about the operating committee only. That's my motion.
Thank you, Dee. Are there any seconds?
And just a point of clarification, would that be to propose the change that the committee shall also function as the credit underwriting committee?
Yes, that is. That includes the committee having the ability to function as such, as it should. And I don't think you're going to come up with anything more comprehensive, but you know, if y'all want to push it on down the road, that's fine. That's up to you.
You know, I would second that. I think that this language is what we worked through last time. This is what we agreed to include. And I think we did vote for this change to occur. So I would be in favor of that.
All right, so we have a motion and a second from Carl. Thank you both. So let's go to a vote. And so all those in favor of accepting the language as written, as Dee Williams has motioned, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. We have new language. Thank you, Dee Williams, for urging us along, and Carl for the motion. So, but also appreciate the feedback from others, you know, if tackling this all comprehensively. So I think all good either way. All right, y'all. We made it through our first item on the agenda of old business. Where's our chair when we need him? So on new business, we'll shift and would ask any of the participating lenders if there are any new loans to discuss today.
No
Our
new
lenders.
loans for us today.
No new loans from Mountain BizWorks. Thank you, Yasleen. Self-help?
No.
None. Okay. Good deal. New business. So reminders about upcoming events. The quarterly report will be presented in July. And so Yasleen, that I believe will be your action. I think it would be great to have that document in advance that we share with the group. Yasleen, do you have a rough time frame for when that will be available?
I will get that out a week before the meeting.
Okay. So, all righty. And then in terms of reminders, as Karen has suggested, self-help, I will continue editing the services and duties agreement. Thank you for taking the lead on that. And Karen, you'll let us know when's a reasonable time for us to be able to review that first draft or that next draft. And then we'll get our working group meeting to discuss it. Great. Any questions or comments on those items, those reminders? Go ahead, Dee. Go ahead, Dee.
Chairman, thank you so much for your leadership, and I think you're doing a great job. I wanted to just say that I might have to tip out because his phone's ringing. Also, Carl, thank you for your support, and just want to thank the committee. This is not easy stuff we're doing, but this is what leadership really is all about and why we've been put here. So thank you very much. I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dee, as always, for all you do in this community. So one item that before we adjourn that I would like to add an update. So I think all of you have seen that Jeff Kaplan is stepping down from his role on this committee. And so we'll miss Jeff, obviously. So two things happen here. That one creates a position that needs to be filled on the Buncombe County side. So Buncombe County staff will work to advertise that. I would ask the folks on this committee to please help us socialize that so that we can identify some good replacements to get onto the committee. We'll go through a formal application process with interviews and all of that stuff. So, but please pass it along. Once it's available, I'll share it with this group. But I think we want to continue to make sure that as many folks are seeing the application as possible, because I think we want folks on this committee that, you know, have experience in the space, because I think their voices will be really important. So let's make sure that we really socialize this well and don't just leave it to passive application or committee application processes. So I'll look for your help on that. Additionally, so Jeff has stepped down from the committee, but also that leaves a vacancy at the chair level. And so I'm serving as the vice chair. And what we've done in the past, and I'm open to a discussion on this process, we don't have to take action today. But if there's any interest in this group for someone taking on the chair role, it would be helpful to know that, and then we can work through an election process in our upcoming meeting potentially that is compliant with all of the appropriate guidelines. So I wanted to open that up and see if anyone has an interest in taking on that role moving forward. Dee, I see your hand is raised. What's on your mind?
I vote for you, Tim. That's all I can say.
That wasn't that was not the intent of that section.
That's all I got to say. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Appreciate that. So one nomination that I am deleting from the record, Secretary.
I would like to nominate Maui.
I like it. Yasleen. Carl, your hand is raised.
Yeah, I have a question as to, to what extent do you need to understand the workings of Mountain BizWorks, which is the only place where we've made any loans, the context of where this money has come from, and sort of what are the criteria for this leadership role on this committee? I think having some understanding of that would be good for me just as a member.
That's great. And Karen will probably be able to tell me that it's all listed in the services and duties agreement. But, what I would say, and I welcome anyone to chime in, I don't think there's a need to understand like how BizWorks or self-help does loans. I mean, clearly that's beneficial. I think the key in the chair role is to keep this group moving forward and not getting stuck in the mud. and helping us evolve. This is still a very young committee, but a young committee that's just received some substantial funding. So I think we need to be ready for the moment and continue to grow. And so that's what I think we need in terms of leadership, personally. Anyone else have thoughts on that? Right.
I'll chime in. Just tactically, the chair is also responsible for helping to formulate the agendas and supporting documents, and does work with city staff in advance of this meeting to make sure that those are ready to go. So that's just some other responsibilities.
Nikki, I appreciate the grounding, because that is the reality. Val, your hand is raised.
Yes. So just to be like transparent with the group, so Jeff did ask me to just consider, stepping into this role. And obviously I'm one of the newest committee members. And so I was, humbled by that. And, Jeff and I work closely together in other organizations like at Hatch and elsewhere. And, I've been part of the ecosystem for a little bit, not probably as long as nearly all of you, but it is a passion of mine. It kind of comes down to scheduling and just bandwidth. And so that's kind of what I'm personally thinking through and considering and weighing out currently. But, thank you, Yaslin, for the nomination. But I haven't said no or written it off, but I'm not like, yes, put me in that role, because I do have other responsibilities. And I would hope that whoever steps up to try to fill Jeff's shoes, would be able to be all in on it. So just to give you all a heads up of where I'm at personally, but I would hope that others in this group would also be considering the role as well.
Okay, so what we'll do on our next agenda, we'll have a section to elect some officers, namely namely the chair. And so the process that we walked through last time, there was formal nominations like in the meeting, and then a motion was made, to elect specific people, and then we just had a vote. So at our next meeting, that's kind of the process we'll go through. I'll look for somebody to introduce a motion to nominate someone, and then we'll vote on it. So that'll be the deal. Cool. I appreciate everyone being patient with me today as we muddled through, but we made it to the end. I appreciate all the time. Is there anyone, does anyone on the committee have anything they'd like to share before we move to public comment? Good deal. So we'll move to public comment, to which I will turn to Laura and Christina to see if there's any members of the public with us today.
Yeah, there are no public comments.
Okay, thank you, Laura. So no public comment today. With all that said, I appreciate your time. I hope everyone is having a great summer, and I will move to adjourn this meeting. So thank you.